This is one of my good friends, Eric Blaser, and Eric's from Portland.
Yes.
And he describes himself as a horticulturist. He knows basically it all. We're going to talk today about fall maintenance, what to cut back, what not to cut back, and just walk around the yard and just talk about it. This morning earlier, Bruce Richardson came over and we're talking about dividing stuff, and we dug up these iris, which you just made an interesting, fascinating comment about.
They're flag irises, which are considered a noxious weed. They get in the water habitats and they clog water systems. They spread, you can see it's right here. See how it's gone around and out of its boundary? And it's really not a great plant.
It hardly has any flowers.
I know, and then they have these big dangly seeds which the wildlife spread.
Oh, really?
So there's fruit. So there's fruit around the seed, and they poop it around. And anyway.
So these weren't all planted?
Yeah.
Were they planted on purpose, or?
It's hard to say.
God, can you imagine how hard digging that up is and all those
it's actually kind of easy. You know, when you just get down at the bottom with the little, I have this tool called a homatic, and you get right underneath the rhizome and you just kind of pull real hard and it'll come right up.
Okay.
It's a bit of work, but it's worth it because you'll have this area back.
What else should I do for fall maintenance in this area?
Well, anything that blooms in the spring is best divided in the fall.
Or cut back.
Or cut back. So if you have grasses, which I see some over there, they need to be cut back and divided in this time of year as well. And this nice clump of variegated stinking iris, which is the Fidissima.
This?
Yeah. And so you can see there's quite a large clump there. You could easily make 3 nice clumps out of that. And because of the variegation, you have other variegated plants here, like this barberry, probably a pygmy dwarf is my guess. And so you spread the variegation out through the yard so then your eye sees a bigger picture.
So it's not too busy one place.
Right.
All right, we'll have to talk about that later. Well, what about this barberry?
Well, that needs a good haircut.
This barberry, when we first moved here, we've owned this property 5 years. It was a decent size. Now, everything here is the same size, and it just really bugs us. How much can I cut that back?
You can take about 1/3 off of it.
Ooh, I want more than that.
Well, the best way to do it is, this is a cane regenerative plant. It's like a big rose. You go inside of it, you cut the largest branches out of it, or trunks, if you were to say, and then you're left with a substantially smaller bush, but it doesn't look like it's been pruned with the chainsaw. And so it has this nice loose form. You maintain it that way, and also that as it grows, it'll grow from below and midsection and not get as large next time.
Okay. What do you think?
Well, this is what they call a mugo pine or a dwarf pine.
I thought they're supposed to be little like this.
Well, they can be 12 feet tall or very low to the ground, that high. Mm-hmm. They're variable, and don't always trust the label. You need to have a little bit of history with a plant. Then you can tell that some of these, they say small or dwarf or 1 to 2 feet, and then you end up with this is 6 feet almost. So anyway, on these, they don't regenerate from the center, so they're not a cane regenerative plant. So you have to prune these a little bit different than this barberry. And so here, little is more. So you take sections of it out. And all these plants, they have a repeating habit here.
What do you mean repeating habit?
Well, nature has a repeating pattern of growth, and you want to prune to its habit and not try to make it something that's not supposed to be or can't be or doesn't grow that way. This is a cane regenerative plant. This is more of It's like an outer shell that just gets larger and larger and larger.
And the inside gets emptier, emptier,
Yeah.
emptier.
Then
I mean, it's totally empty
Yeah,
in there.
you and I could be hiding in there.
Later.
And ooh, we can look at your sweet woodruff down there.
Yeah.
So anyway, so you want to carefully prune this back and let a little bit of light get inside of here. Sometimes they can send up a bud or a sprout. It's usually 2 years, and then you can slowly reduce the size of this thing. The other thing you can control its growth by, these are called candles, and as these grow up, you take the longest candle out, and you do that in spring when they're expanding, and then you leave these lower ones alone, and then you can do a shaping through your pine that way. If you wanted to reduce the size of this and keep it in its shape, then you want to do some careful pruning here. And again, this is 1 year's worth of growth, right from the end of my finger to the other one. And so that's how much it grows. So if you were to, and this will do the same. So if you take that candle out, what you get is these side shoots growing, and then it keeps the plant's size inhibited.
And bushier.
Yeah, and it'll fill in more, and it won't be, and that's how you can, with pines, you can control scraggly growth. Now this one you cut all the way down to the ground. This is a spring blooming iris, as I mentioned before. So what you want to do is divide these. If you don't divide it, what'll happen, it'll quit blooming. You'll just have this green, grassy blob, but not all that attractive. But every 2 to 3 years, you'd want to divide it pretty good.
Oh, that's so much work. My goodness.
Well, you know, you can give some away at the plant sale,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
I mean, it's...
Good plug. Good plug. Okay, let's just keep walking down here. Is that grass called?
This is blue fescue. It's a
Do I
great plant. Don't do anything to it.
I pull the dead out
Yeah,
under it.
you could pull, yep. You can also divide it. You can see this has been shaded by our friendly mystery iris.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that this has now kind of fallen apart. This one is one after a while it'll start having a dead center, and then you need to cut it up and replant pieces of it. It's a great grass for Lopez, especially in gravelly, sandy soil and little or no water.
Huh.
So it's a great plant. I like it. And there's another one of those mystery iris, and you can see it laying flat down there. And then this looks like either a miscanthus grass, or it is really kind of overtaken its boundaries. And so what I would do here is completely cut it down into a mound, and then dig up the whole thing and quarter it, and then plant a quarter of it back.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because then you'll have everything in proportion. You can see your hellebore there, and the fescue, and the what do you call that thing?
Heather.
Thank you very much. And so everything would be back into proportion. This is kind of being a bully in the china shop.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll put things back in perspective with the rest of the plants. The best thing to do with lavender in the fall is cut just the flower tops off. Because if you cut into the foliage here, you know, years ago, when I thought I knew what I didn't know or whatever, I cut lavender back in the fall, and it was at 7 houses, and they all died.
Oh.
And it was because they don't really like wet feet, but they tolerate it. It's a Mediterranean plant, and so if you cut into this foliage and reduce it, it can't transpire. It can't get rid of the water at its feet, and so it just sits there and it rots. And you know, there's no that's how you learn. You kill plants. It's okay to kill plants. But anyway, so the lavender, I would just take the tops off, and you can see it's just pushing some late summer growth, and I'll just leave it alone. And you just cut right at the top of that, but not into it, and then the new foliage will grow through it, and you won't know that you had the stubs left over. So the reason why you trim lavenders in the spring is so you don't get this. You can see the center has opened up and it's split. So what happens is it's like a rosemary does the same thing. It grows out like that, and then it splits down in here, and then the plant, then you have to throw it away. But if you do a spring pruning on it, especially right after it blooms, and catch it and cut it good and keep it compact, you'll get a nice plant. It may or may not bloom again, and then it'll prevent this kind of die out in the center.
I thought all of this lavender was too old, gotten too woody.
Yeah, well, it does get woody and old, but what happens if you don't? You can certainly make its life longer if you pruned it and you sheared it.
Okay.
I mean, it isn't like an oak tree that, you know, hundreds of years. You won't get hundreds of years out of this, but you can prolong its life.
Okay, good.
And you can see it's kind of grown. It is quite old, and you hear that crack.
That'll probably come right off in your hand.
Yeah. So it's gotten really woody and extended. If you can see all this inner stuff. So, and then again, like the pine tree, then you have this is all dead in here, so it's really good to, after it blooms, it allows light to get in here, and then it'll send up shoots in the center, kind of like the pine, but it's not, it's a slow process, but it helps keep it compact.
Okay. And I'm moving all this. How far can I cut the Dusty Miller back?
Well, it's any gray foliage plant, tends to like drier soils, and if you in Orcas Island at the ferry landing, this is kind of naturalized and there's no water at all. So if it's too wet and then you cut this way back, you can also kill this plant too. And so at this time of year, I would just get rid of the longer pieces and trim it back to a side shoot like here, just so it's tidy. And any of the old foliage, if you wanted to, you could pull it off, and you can see this is, this is an old flower spike here, and just kind of take the older stuff out, but leave the nice new gray, white foliage. That's the newest, and that's going to be more viable to the plant.
Okay, I'm moving all this. I didn't know how big it would get.
That's lovely.
I thought it was going to get about this big.
This is like snow in summer.
And all this crocosmia, I cut it back to the ground.
Yeah, and you can see what happens. They're very susceptible to spider mites, and that's what this is here. Underneath here, if you look closely, you can see like webs and the spiders on that, and they usually like the undersides. And so what happens is, when it gets really bad, it'll turn it all brown, but it doesn't really hurt it, and it doesn't get bad until after it blooms. So
when do I whack it?
Anytime. These make really nice dried.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Arrangements.
So this, Tom and Lorraine told me to whack this off at almost the base. And
well, it's like a climbing rose. At first it sends up a cane, and then it flowers off of that cane.
It comes back so prolifically.
Yeah, it spreads by rhizomes. And so if you, ouch, rose. So you can see it's getting ready to flower. I would let it flower and then let it form the hips. And the hips are quite attractive on the plant in the wintertime.
Are they?
They're kind of red and orange, and they'll hang for a long time.
Oh, I've been whacking them off.
Yeah, so and anything that's outside of its current shape, like this and that, can get pruned back. And then I would wait until spring and do a better pruning on it.
Okay, good. Same thing with these geraniums?
Yeah, so this is really, the nice thing about the hardy geraniums is you can just pull it up, the old flower spikes off, and you can see the plants underneath here, and you can see the new leaves. So all you have to do is just kind of pull and this will all come out. The autumn joy sedum, those they're in its prime right now, and it's a little on the yellow side because this is a little lacking in water, and that hosta up there is a little yellow, so this tells me the whole garden could use a little bit more water in the summer.
It drains so much because of the slope. It's
even the drip system. So this catmint here, normally when it has enough water, it won't, again, it gets spider mites, and you can see that spotting on the foliage is dry. And so it's stressed, and so insects go to stressed plants.
When do I cut back hostas though?
Well,
They just sort of melt.
they do. They
Just let them melt.
Well, I like to get them when they're firm but yellow, and then leave them above the ground, the leaves. So I have a little hand sickle. Maybe one time we can do a tool.
Oh, that'd be great. Great.
Workshop or something.
Love that.
So then I have a little serrated Japanese sickle, and I just grab all the leaves and just go. So you just cut once instead of. And so I like to leave them above the ground, then I know where they are. So then the buds for next year are just at the soil level, and if you step on them or if you damage them, you knock the growth, and then you'll knock them back pretty good. So I like to know where things are, so I always leave a stub above the ground.
That's good advice.
So whenever I know where I'm walking. So it's really been helpful for me, mindful for me. It's like, oh yeah, that's where the hosta is.
That's good advice. Is it time to whack these back like this?
Oh yeah. You can see how they're starting to fade. They're kind of
so
the
ratty
leaves
looking.
are relaxing, and and then it's okay to have slug damage. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it looks better without it, of course. So this is where you take, the stalks and leave a little, and just cut it right off, and it's real easy. You can just grab,
Look how big
10
these
branches
were.
and yeah.
This is stilby. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Can I divide that?
Yes, and so it's a spring bloomer, and so you can do it now in the fall, which is a really good time to do it.
Just cut it or pull it apart?
Well, it has rhizomes, and so you want to look with your fingers, feel where the rhizomes are, and then you want to take it with, quite a bit of rhizome on it, so it hasn't. You're transplanting a chunk of it and not just a part of it. So you want to. So you could get 3 plants out of that.
Woohoo! Okay.
And here's more stilby here. And you can see how it's dead in the middle and then it's spreading on the outside. It's time to divide that. And this one here is died down and it's all the way into there. So you could take sections of this out. This looks like it's on the little dry side too.
It was beautiful.
Oh, I bet.
Very lush.
And underneath an apple tree, I mean, what better combination than that?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I hope that was helpful.
This was extremely helpful.
Okay.
I feel like I've had a personal consultation.
You
I
did.
have had a personal consultation.
Pay up, honey. No, just kidding.
Well, thank you, Eric.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah. I love this. This is what I love doing, and I love seeing new plants and new plant placements. I learn from my clients. I don't, I know a lot, but I don't know everything, and I'm still learning. And this is an endless. Gardening is an endless educational experience. You're always learning.
Cool. Cool.
I mean,
I just don't want to always be digging stuff up.
well,
There's so much digging, replanting.
Well, it's tending. You're tending. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
I need to accept
what
it.
I love about it is that you can just forget about politics. You can forget about everything else and be in the garden. And when you're done, you've known you made a difference, and it makes you feel good.
It's good. It's good.
That's
Good
that's
thought.
why I like doing it.
Love that.